March 28, 1942, 1:34 a.m. The port of Saint-Nazaire, France. A German harbor patrol officer named Captain Karl Konrad Meck is standing on the dock, watching searchlights sweep across the Loire River estuary. He's 38 years old, from Hamburg, 14 years in the Kriegsmarine. Been posted here for 8 months guarding the largest dry dock in Europe. He's cold, tired, bored. Another night of absolutely nothing happening. Then he sees something that doesn't make sense. A ship, coming upriver. Fast. Too fast for the current. Flying a German naval flag. Meck grabs his binoculars. Focuses. The ship is old. Destroyer class. American made. What the hell is a German destroyer doing here without clearance? He reaches for the alarm. Hesitates. If he's wrong, if this is some surprise inspection from high command, he'll look like an idiot. What Captain Meck doesn't know is that the ship he's looking at is HMS Campbellton, a British destroyer packed with 5 tons of explosives on a delayed fuse. And in exactly 12 hours, those explosives are going to detonate while he's standing 30 feet away inspecting the wreckage. This is the story of Operation Chariot, the most audacious commando raid of World War II. A literal suicide mission that Churchill personally approved, knowing most of the men wouldn't come back. And the one raid that changed the entire naval war in the Atlantic. Welcome to the night 611 men attacked the largest German naval fortress in France with 1 ship, 18 boats, and a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Let's talk about why Saint-Nazaire mattered. Because without understanding what they were protecting, you can't appreciate how impossible this raid was. The Normandy dock at Saint-Nazaire is the only dry dock on the Atlantic coast large enough to service the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz is Germany's largest battleship. 42,000 tons of floating death. 8 15-inch guns that can punch holes through anything the Royal Navy has. And here's the problem. If the Tirpitz leaves its base in Norway and attacks Allied convoys in the Atlantic, it needs somewhere to repair if damaged. The only dock big enough is at Saint-Nazaire. So the British have a simple equation. Destroy the dock and the Tirpitz stays locked in Norway. Keep the dock intact, and the most dangerous warship in the world can hunt freely across the Atlantic. The RAF tries bombing it. Doesn't work. The dock is protected by massive concrete bunkers. Anti-aircraft guns everywhere. The bombs either miss or don't do enough damage. The dock stays operational. That's when Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman gets a call from Combined Operations Headquarters in London. They want to talk about Saint-Nazaire. Newman's 40 years old. Royal Engineers. Commanded commando raids in Norway. Known for being calm under fire and having a gift for understanding structural engineering. The meeting happens on February 14, 1942. Newman walks into the room expecting a planning session. Instead, he gets blueprints of the Normandy dock and one sentence from the operations commander: "We need you to destroy this from the inside." Newman studies the blueprints. The dock is shaped like a massive U. Gates at the entrance. The only way to destroy it permanently is to ram the gates with enough explosives to blow them off their hinges and collapse the surrounding structures. Problem: you need a ship for that. And the Loire River estuary leading to Saint-Nazaire is heavily defended. Shore batteries, patrol boats, searchlights. No ship could make it upriver without being blown apart. Unless the Germans don't realize it's an enemy ship until it's too late. That's when someone suggests HMS Campbellton, an American-made destroyer given to Britain under Lend-Lease. 50 flush-deck destroyers the US gave Britain in 1940. They're old, slow, but they have one useful feature. From a distance, especially at night, they look almost identical to German Mau-class torpedo boats. The plan starts forming. Strip Campbellton down. Lighten it so it sits higher in the water and can clear the shallow estuary. Pack the bow with explosives on a delayed fuse. Disguise it as a German ship. Ram it into the dock gates at full speed. Blow the charges 8 hours later when German engineers are inspecting it. Oh, and while you're ramming the dock, land 250 commandos to destroy the pumping stations, winding houses, and anything else that makes the dock functional. Then escape 40 miles back down the river and somehow make it to the ocean where Royal Navy ships are waiting. Newman looks at the plan. Asks the obvious question: what are the odds of success? The answer: about 50%. The odds of everyone getting back alive? Closer to 10%. Newman volunteers immediately. Because some missions aren't about coming home. They're about making sure the other guy loses something he can't replace. By March 1, 1942, they have their crew. 611 men total. 257 commandos under Newman. 354 Royal Navy sailors to crew Campbellton and 18 motor launches that'll carry the commandos. Every single one of them a volunteer. Every single one briefed on the odds. Most of them write final letters home before they leave. Commander Robert Ryder is in charge of the naval side. 34 years old. Arctic explorer before the war. The kind of guy who sails into blizzards for fun. Now he's sailing into the most heavily defended port in France. The ship's captain is Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty. 29 years old. Quiet. Methodical. His job is simple. Ram Campbellton into the dock gates at exactly the right angle and speed. Too slow and the gates won't collapse. Too fast and the ship breaks apart before the charges can detonate. He's got about a 5-second window to hit it perfectly. Let me introduce you to some of the commandos, because you need to know these men before we watch most of them die. Sergeant Thomas Durrant, 22 years old. From London. Gunner. His job is to man the forward gun on one of the motor launches and provide covering fire during the landing. He's got a reputation for not backing down from anything. His friends joke that he's too stubborn to die. Lieutenant Stuart Chant, 26. Royal Engineers. His job is to blow up the southern pumping station. He's got 90 seconds to place charges, set fuses, and get out before the building explodes with him inside. Captain Mickey Byrne, 27. Demolitions expert. Before the war, he was a journalist who actually interviewed Hitler in 1936 and came away thinking the guy was a lunatic. Now he's going to blow up Hitler's favorite dock. Corporal Arthur Young, 20. Youngest man on the raid. Looks about 16. Almost got rejected because commanders thought he was too young. Begged them to let him go. Promised he could handle it. They gave him one job: protect Lieutenant Chant while he plants explosives. March 26, 1942. The force departs from Falmouth, England. 1 destroyer. 18 motor launches. Sailing in formation across the English Channel toward France. They have to cross 400 miles of open water. Past German U-boat patrols. Past reconnaissance aircraft. Without being spotted or engaged. For 30 hours, everything goes perfectly. They timed their crossing to arrive at the Loire estuary at 1:30 a.m. on March 28th. High tide. Spring tide specifically. The water level will be just high enough for Campbellton to clear the sandbanks and submerged obstacles. At midnight, they're 12 miles from Street Nazir. Campbellton raises a German naval flag. They've modified the ship to look like a German destroyer. Cut down the funnels. Change the profile. In the dark, from a distance, it's convincing. At 1:22 a.m., they enter the Loire estuary. Searchlights from both shores sweep across the water. German patrol boats are moving. Shore batteries are manned. Every gun in St. Nazaire is pointed at the river. And Campbellton is sailing directly toward them at 18 knots. This is the part where everything depends on audacity. They're not hiding. Not running dark. They're sailing straight up the river with lights on like they own the place. At 1:28 a.m., a German signal station on the north shore challenges them. Flashes a light. Demands identification. A British sailor on Campbellton who speaks German flashes back. Uses German naval codes they captured from a U-boat 6 months ago. Says they're a damaged torpedo boat requesting permission to dock for repairs. The German signalman buys it. Waves them through. Captain Mech is watching this happen from the main dock. Something feels wrong. The ship's profile is right. The codes are right. But the way it's moving, the speed, the trajectory, something's off. At 1:30 a.m., Mech makes a decision. He orders all shore batteries to open fire. Just to be safe. Every gun on both sides of the river opens up simultaneously. Campbellton is suddenly sailing through a wall of tracer fire and explosions. Shells hitting the water. Hitting the deck. Tearing through the thin steel hull. Commander Beatty is on the bridge. Shells are exploding around him. The forward gun is hit. 3 sailors killed instantly. The bridge windows shatter. Beatty doesn't flinch. Just keeps the ship pointed straight at the dock gates. 1:33 a.m. Campbellton is 300 yards from target. The motor launches behind it are taking devastating fire. 2 launches blown out of the water. A 3rd burning. Men screaming in the river. Sergeant Durrant is on motor launch 314. His gun position is fully exposed. German shore batteries have zeroed in on him. He's firing back with a Bren gun. Shells are landing all around him. Shrapnel tears through his leg. He keeps firing. Takes a hit to the shoulder. Keeps firing. Both legs shredded. Still firing. His crewmates are screaming at him to get down. Durrant just keeps pulling the trigger. Shooting at German gun positions. Buying seconds for the men behind him. 1:34 a.m. Campbellton hits the dock gates at exactly 19.5 knots. The impact is massive. The entire bow crumples. The gates buckle inward. The ship rides up onto the dock like a beached whale. Exactly where it needs to be. Beatty is thrown across the bridge. Gets up. Checks the position. Perfect. The charges are now sitting exactly against the gate mechanism. Time for 9 a.m. 7.5 hours. The commandos pour off the ship. 250 men jumping onto the dock into a firestorm of German machine gun fire. They split into their pre-assigned teams. Each team has a specific target. Southern pumping station. Northern pumping station. Winding house. Fuel storage. U-boat pens. Lieutenant Chant and Corporal Young sprint toward the southern pumping station. Bullets sparking off the concrete around them. They reach the door. Lock. Young blows it open with a shaped charge. They rush inside. German defenders are everywhere. The building is full of pipes and machinery and Wehrmacht soldiers who weren't expecting British commandos to materialize out of the darkness. Young lays down covering fire while Champ places explosives. Thermite charges on the main pumps. Plastic explosive on the support columns. He's working fast, sweating despite the cold. A German soldier appears on the catwalk above them. Fires. Hits Young in the chest. Young goes down. Chant spins. Shoots the German. Goes back to Young. The kid is bleeding bad. Chant drags him toward the door. Young grabs his arm. Gasps out, set the charges. I'll cover. Young props himself against a wall. Raises his rifle. Chant finishes placing the explosives. Sets the fuse for 60 seconds. Grabs Young. They stumble out the door just as the building explodes behind them in a ball of flame and twisted metal. Captain Mickey Burns' team hits the northern pumping station. Same chaos. German defenders. Machine gun fire. They fight their way inside. Place charges. Byrne is setting fuses when a German grenade lands next to him. He kicks it. The grenade explodes mid-air. Shrapnel tears through his arm. He doesn't stop. Finishes the fuse. Gets his team out. The building explodes on schedule. All across the dock, explosions are going off. Pumping stations. Winding houses. Fuel tanks. The commandos are doing exactly what they came to do. Destroying everything that makes the dock functional. But the motor launches that were supposed to evacuate them are gone. Most of them destroyed in the initial approach. Burning wrecks in the river. The survivors scattered. There's no way out. Newman realizes they're trapped. Radios what's left of his teams. New plan, fight your way into town. Try to escape and evade. Make for Spain if you can. They try. For 3 hours, small groups of commandos fight running battles through the streets of Saint-Nazaire. German troops are everywhere. Wehrmacht, SS, French collaborationist police. The commandos are outnumbered, outgunned, running out of ammunition. One by one they're captured or killed. Newman is captured at 4:15 a.m., shot in the leg, still trying to organize an escape. Byrne is captured at 5 a.m. Champ makes it to the edge of town before getting surrounded. Sergeant Thomas Durant is still on motor launch 314. Still alive somehow despite being shot multiple times. The launch is dead in the water. Surrounded by German patrol boats. They're demanding surrender. Durant has one hand left that still works. He's using it to fire the last functional Bren gun, shooting at Germans from 30 feet away. A German officer on one of the patrol boats is watching this in disbelief. This British sailor has been shot at least 8 times. Should be dead. Is still fighting. The officer orders his men to cease fire. Yells across the water demanding surrender. Durant's response is to shoot at him. Finally, the launch is boarded. German sailors rush Durant's position. Find him slumped over his gun, surrounded by spent shell casings. He's lost so much blood he's barely conscious. They take him prisoner. He dies of his wounds 45 minutes later on the German patrol boat. The German officer who captured him, Captain Lieutenant Paul, writes a letter to the British Admiralty through Red Cross channels. The letter describes Durant's actions and recommends him for the highest decoration Britain can give. Durant is awarded the Victoria Cross posthumously. The only Victoria Cross ever recommended by an enemy officer. By 6 a.m. it's over. The commandos are dead or captured. 5 motor launches made it back out to sea. 13 destroyed. Of 611 men who started the raid, 169 are dead. 200 are captured. Only 242 make it home. But Campbellton is still sitting there, lodged in the dock gates. 5 tons of explosives on a timer nobody's told the Germans about. At 7 a.m., Captain Mech boards the wrecked destroyer to inspect it. German engineers swarm over the ship, taking measurements. assessing damage, planning how to remove it. At 8:30 a.m., there are 40 German officers and engineers on and around Campbellton, discussing salvage plans. Mech is standing on the dock 30 feet from the bow, looking at how deep the ship penetrated. It's impressive. Whoever captained this ship knew exactly what they were doing. At 9 a.m., the charges detonate. The explosion is absolutely catastrophic. 5 tons of explosives going off simultaneously in a confined space. The bow of Campbellton disintegrates. The dock gates are blown completely off their hinges. Massive chunks of concrete and steel are hurled hundreds of feet. The blast wave shatters windows 2 miles away. Everyone on or near the ship is killed instantly. Captain Mech, vaporized. The 40 engineers and officers, gone. Another 280 German soldiers and French dock workers in the immediate area, dead or critically wounded. The Normandy dock is completely destroyed. The gates are rubble. The surrounding structures collapsed. The pumping station's already demolished by the commandos. It's not just unusable, it's gone. The Tirpitz never leaves Norway for the rest of the war, because it has nowhere to go if damaged. The dock that could have saved it is a crater. The single greatest threat to Allied convoys is neutralized by 1 destroyer and 611 men who knew they probably wouldn't come back. But here's the insane part. The Germans don't know if there are more delayed charges. Campbellton had 5 tons. What if the motor launches also had charges? What if the whole dock is rigged to explode again? Paranoia sets in. For 3 days, German troops evacuate areas around the dock. Civilians are forced out of Saint Nazaire. Unexploded ordnance teams are sweeping everything. The entire port shuts down. On March 30th, delayed action torpedoes from one of the sunken motor launches detonate in the old entrance lock, killing 60 more Germans who thought the area was safe. The panic gets worse. For a week, Saint Nazaire is essentially abandoned by its defenders. The psychological impact is as devastating as the physical destruction. The surviving commandos are taken to prisoner of war camps. Most spend the rest of the war there. Neumann is sent to Colditz Castle, the camp for prisoners who keep escaping. He tries to escape 4 times. Never succeeds, but never stops trying. Beatty, the captain who rammed Campbellton into the gates, survives the war in POW camps. Returns to Britain in 1945. Awarded the Victoria Cross. Lives until 1975. Gives one interview about the raid in 1972. Says the same thing he told interrogators in 1942. It was the ship that mattered, not us. After the war, a German admiral named Otto Ciliax testifies at war crimes trials. He was in command of naval forces in France during the raid. Allied prosecutors ask him about Street Nazaire. Ask if the dock was strategically important. Ciliax's response: the raid on Saint Nazaire was the single most damaging commando operation against Germany in the entire war. The loss of the dock confined the Tirpitz to Norwegian waters and effectively removed our greatest naval asset from the Atlantic. The British traded 169 men for our most important strategic facility. It was a masterstroke. In 1947, Commander Ryder, who led the naval forces, is contacted by a German naval officer named Kellerman. Kellerman had commanded one of the patrol boats that night. Shot at the motor launches. Captured survivors. He wants to meet Ryder. Apologize for following orders. They meet in London in 1948. Kellerman brings a photograph. It's Sergeant Durant, fighting from his gun position on ML 314, covered in blood, still shooting. Kellerman took the photo right before they boarded the launch. Kellerman tells Ryder he's never seen courage like that. Says Durant changed how he thought about enemies. Made him realize they weren't fighting monsters. They were fighting men just as brave as Germans. He kept the photograph for 3 years trying to find out who the soldier was. When he learned Durant's name, he started crying. Ryder and Kellerman become friends. Correspond until Kellerman's death in 1959. In his final letter, Kellerman writes, "I spent 5 years fighting for Germany. But the bravest thing I ever witnessed was a British soldier who wouldn't stop fighting even after his body gave up. That's the memory I carry." The Normandy dock at Saint Nazaire wasn't fully repaired until 1947. 2 years after the war ended. For the entire duration of the conflict, Germany's largest Atlantic dry dock was a useless crater because 611 men decided that some things are worth dying for. Today there's a memorial at Saint Nazaire, right where Campbellton hit the gates. A simple stone marker with 169 names. The men who didn't come home. Every year on March 28th, British and French veterans hold a ceremony. German naval officers attend, standing together. honoring the same men they once fought. In 2012, the last surviving commando from the raid, a man named Corin Purdon, returned to St. Nazaire at age 92. He walked to the memorial, stood there for 20 minutes in silence. A reporter asked what he was thinking about. Purdon's answer, "The ones who didn't walk away. They were better men than me. I survived by luck. They died by design. And they won." That dock stayed broken for 5 years. The Tirpitz never threatened another convoy. We paid a terrible price, but we won. He died 6 months later. The last man who knew what it felt like to sail into that firestorm and somehow live. The St. Nazaire raid wasn't just about destroying a dock. It was about proving that strategic targets are worth any sacrifice. That sometimes victory requires accepting casualties that would break most commanders. That courage isn't about coming home. It's about making sure your death accomplishes something that justifies the loss. 611 men sailed up the Loire River knowing most of them wouldn't come back. They did it anyway. Destroyed the most important naval facility in France. Neutralized the Tirpitz. Changed the entire naval balance in the Atlantic. And they did it with one ship, 18 boats, and the absolute certainty that some missions are worth dying for. The dock stayed broken. The Tirpitz stayed trapped, the Atlantic convoys kept sailing. They won,